CRM Part 3. The learning outcomes for this section are to understand the cost of customer acquisition, understand the customer relationship lifecycle, and understand the impact of customer lifetime. First of all, let's recap on Part 2, where we identified the benefits and rationale of CRM, looking at how customization emerges, how loyal customers get access to discounts, and there's increased ease of use. We looked at the dangers of CRM, how there can be customer exclusion among certain groups, and CRM is still a concept that is done to the customer, not necessarily for them. And we acknowledge the managerial implications, where any organization needs to be relationship ready, and those interactions of the relationship need to be blueprinted, planned, trained for, and resourced. Let's look first at the concept of CAC, the customer acquisition cost. Let's look at the customer acquisition cost as an expression in terms of customer lifetime value, which is something we'll come on to talk about later in this section. So when someone becomes a customer of an organization, there's a cost associated with bringing that customer on board. And it will be different for different customers depending on what route towards becoming a customer they took. We may have been attracted through an online advert or direct sales or through a sales promotion. But that route has a cost attached to it, and that is the cost of the customer acquisition. Any organization needs to know its overall average cost of customer acquisition, and it needs to know its specific cost of acquisition through different channels. Once the customer has been acquired, they start to bring with them revenue, and so the cost of the acquisition begins to be offset by the custom that we get from that individual. And that brings us to a break-even point. And once we go across that break-even point, that tends to be when the relationship starts to develop further and flourish. So we're looking to get the customer beyond the break-even point through the relationship and then develop and sustain that relationship in order to lead us to profitability. So the customer acquisition cost tells us that each customer has a cost attached, and once converted, the customer acquisition cost needs to be recovered through the relationship that we develop with the individual. Any CAC will have these kinds of things sitting behind it: the market research that was carried out by the business, the segmentation, targeting and position processes, branding, the costs of content generation, the costs of marketing communications, the costs of managing the sales funnel, lead generation specifically as an activity, and then the process of converting prospects into customers. These are all costs, marketing costs, that are related to the acquisition of customers. Let's look at an example of that. So the National Trust for Scotland is a not-for-profit organisation interested in protecting and developing and sharing the natural heritage of Scotland. So they have an acquisition strategy of rewarding existing members for referral. So when an existing member invites a friend to join the National Trust, they get some form of reward that has a cost attached to it. They have point of sale information at their key attractions, which has a cost of development and distribution. So all these things feed into the cost of acquiring customers. They then have a development strategy. So once someone has signed up to be a member, there's a magazine sent to them. Emails are sent to them on a regular basis. And there are special members-only events. And this forms part of the National Trust's development strategy. As that relationship develops through their ongoing activities, a retention strategy kicks in, because a membership for the National Trust for Scotland lasts 12 months. So when the 12 months is about to expire, the retention strategy is to encourage members to renew for the next year. And there is a direct debit auto-renew function. So they encourage the members to sign up for the auto-renew, because that will ensure member retention. And the phrase here is that they're trying to make it easy to stay. And as we'll come on to look at, all customer relationships come to an end. So the National Trust for Scotland has built into its relationship lifecycle management a managing the customer exit part. So they will ask for feedback on the reasons for leaving to people who cease their membership, trying to draw some value from that ending relationship in understanding what might stop future memberships finishing early. And they have a thinking of leaving webpage, which allows people who are considering stopping their membership to remind themselves of the benefits, and for the National Trust for Scotland to see the traffic that is directed towards it, to see if perhaps there is a peak time of year in which people visit the thinking of leaving page, and that will allow them to improve their strategy towards managing the customer life cycle.